I thought I knew everything about wealthy men until I met him, a billionaire who collected hearts like trophies. He offered me $1 million to be his fake girlfriend for 3 months. I said yes. What happened next changed both our lives forever. Before I tell you this incredible story, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because you won't want to miss how this unfolds. Trust me, this story will leave you questioning everything you think you know about love and money. You know that feeling when life keeps kicking you while you're down? That's exactly where I was 6 months ago. I'm Maya, by the way, 26, working at this tiny marketing agency downtown, where my boss treats me like I'm invisible half the time. I live in a one-bedroom apartment that's basically the size of a closet, counting every penny just to make rent. My big dream, starting my own agency, but with my savings account laughing at me with its whopping $37, that dream felt about as realistic as flying to the moon. And then there was Kevin, my ex-boyfriend, who had the nerve to tell me I wasn't ambitious enough right before he walked out. Apparently, dating someone who serves tables on weekends to pay bills wasn't his idea of success. The irony? He was still living with his parents at 28. But here's where the story gets crazy. Adrian Cross, ever heard of him? Probably not by name, but trust me, you've used his apps. This guy built a tech empire worth $3 billion by the time he turned 34. The media loved calling him the Silicon Heartbreaker because he went through girlfriends like I go through coffee, quickly and without much thought. Models, actresses, heiresses, they all got their 15 minutes with him before being replaced by someone newer, shinier. What I didn't know then was that Adrian treated love like everything else in his life, as a business transaction. His motto: everything has a price. Love, loyalty, companionship, just items on a spreadsheet to him. Our worlds couldn't have been more different. While I was counting quarters for laundry, he was buying companies for fun. While I was getting dumped for not being ambitious enough, he was throwing away relationships like used tissues. We should never have crossed paths, but sometimes fate has a twisted sense of humor. It was a Tuesday morning, and I was running late to work, again. I rushed into this fancy coffee shop near my office, not because I could afford their overpriced lattes, but because their Wi-Fi was free, and I needed to send some emails before my boss noticed I wasn't at my desk yet. I was trying to juggle my laptop bag, purse, and this scalding hot coffee when it happened. I literally, and I mean literally, ran straight into someone. My coffee went flying, splashing all over this guy's expensive-looking white shirt. I'm talking about a shirt that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Oh my God, I am so sorry. I started frantically grabbing napkins, trying to dab at his shirt while simultaneously wanting to disappear into the floor. I'm such a klutz. I'm so sorry. I'll pay for dry cleaning. Hey, relax, he said, and his voice was surprisingly calm. It's just a shirt. I looked up then, really looked at him for the first time. Dark hair, sharp jawline, and these intense brown eyes that seemed to be studying me like I was some kind of puzzle. He was handsome in that effortless way some guys just have, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car. Just a shirt. I laughed nervously. This looks like it could feed me for a month. The words slipped out before I could stop them, and I immediately felt my cheeks burning. Sorry, I didn't mean to. But he was smiling now, a real smile that reached his eyes. You're not wrong. It probably could. He paused, tilting his head slightly. You don't know who I am, do you? I blinked at him. Was I supposed to? He looked familiar in that vague way everyone in this city does, like maybe I'd seen him on a billboard or something. Should I? Are you famous or something? His laugh was genuine, surprised even. Something like that. He extended his hand. I'm Adrian. Maya. I shook his hand, still mortified about the coffee situation. And I really am sorry about your shirt. If you give me your dry cleaner's info, I'll take care of it. Don't worry about it, he said, but he didn't let go of my hand right away. You know, You're the first person in years who's looked at me and not immediately wanted something. I had no idea what he meant by that, but before I could ask, my phone started buzzing with angry texts from my boss wondering where I was. Oh crap, I'm so late for work. I grabbed my bag and what was left of my dignity. Again, really sorry about the shirt. I was already at the door when I heard him call out, Maya, how do you take your coffee? What? I turned back, confused. Your coffee? How do you like it? Black. With 2 sugars, I called back, not understanding why he was asking. Good to know, he said with that mysterious smile again. I rushed out, thinking that was the end of it. Just another embarrassing moment in the life of Maya Johnson. Little did I know that spilled coffee was about to change everything. See, what I didn't realize was that Adrian Cross rarely, if ever, had genuine interactions with people. Everyone who came into his orbit wanted something, a job, an investment, a chance to get close to his money. But I had looked at him and seen just a guy with coffee stains on his shirt. No agenda, no fake smile, no attempt to impress him. That authenticity intrigued him in a way he hadn't experienced before. While I was rushing to my tiny desk at the marketing agency, frantically apologizing to my boss for being late again, Adrian was still standing in that coffee shop, staring at the door I'd just rushed through. For the first time in years, someone had surprised him, and Adrian Cross didn't like surprises. He liked being in control, knowing all the variables, predicting outcomes. But something about our brief encounter had thrown off his calculations. He asked the barista about me, found out I was a regular who always ordered the cheapest thing on the menu and worked on her laptop in the corner. He learned I tipped well, despite clearly not having much money, and that I always said please and thank you. These small details painted a picture of someone living completely outside his world, yet somehow more genuine than anyone in it. While his relationships came with prenups and negotiations, I had apologized profusely for an accident and offered to pay for damages I probably couldn't afford. That afternoon, while I was dealing with an impossible client who wanted champagne marketing on a beer budget, Adrian was in his corner office, 50 floors above the city, finding himself thinking about a woman who spilled coffee on him and called his shirt a month's worth of groceries. Neither of us knew it yet, but that collision, literal and metaphorical, had set something in motion that would challenge everything we both thought we knew about love, money, and what really matters in life. I went home that night to my tiny apartment, heated up leftover pizza, and told my roommate about the weird encounter with the expensive shirt guy. She laughed it off, said rich guys were all the same anyway. Adrian went home to his penthouse, ordered dinner from a 5-star restaurant, and found himself wondering what Maya was doing. For someone who prided himself on always being 3 steps ahead, he had no idea what was coming next. And honestly, neither did I. 3 weeks later, my life got turned completely upside down. I was sitting at my desk, trying to make our latest client's organic dog biscuit company sound like the next big thing, when my boss Karen walked over with this weird expression on her face. Maya, we just got a call from Cross Technologies. They want to discuss a potential campaign. She paused, looking confused. They specifically asked for you. Cross Technologies. The name sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it. Must be a mistake, I said, going back to my dog biscuit copy. No mistake. The meeting's tomorrow at 2. The next day, I walked into this gleaming corporate tower, feeling like a fish out of water in my discount store blazer. The receptionist directed me to the top floor, and when those elevator doors opened, there he was, coffee stain guy, sitting behind a desk the size of my entire apartment. Maya. He stood up, that same mysterious smile playing on his lips. Right on time. You're... I stared at him, pieces clicking together. You're Adrian Cross. Guilty as charged. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Please sit. I felt like an idiot. No wonder he'd asked if I knew who he was. Adrian Cross, tech billionaire, The guy whose apps I used every day without thinking twice. And I'd called his shirt a month's worth of groceries. To his face. Look, if this is about the coffee thing, I already said I'd pay for dry cleaning. It's not about the coffee. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. Though I have to admit, that was the most honest reaction I've gotten from anyone in years. Then why am I here? Because no offense, but your company doesn't exactly need help marketing to people who clip coupons. He laughed. Actually laughed. You're right, I don't need marketing help. Adrian stood up, walking to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. I need something else entirely. Okay. I waited, feeling more confused by the second. Maya, I'm going to make you an offer. Hear me out completely before you say anything. He turned back to face me, and suddenly his expression was all business. I need you to be my girlfriend. I blinked. Excuse me? Not a real girlfriend, a fake one. 3 months. $1 million. The world seemed to tilt sideways. I'm sorry, what now? My grandmother is turning 80 next month. She's been pressuring me about settling down, finding someone real. She's threatening to restructure her will if I don't bring home someone she approves of for her birthday celebration. I stared at him like he'd grown a second head. And you think I'm someone she'd approve of? I think you're someone real. Genuine. Everything my usual dates aren't. He returned to his desk, pulling out what looked like a contract. 3 months, public appearances, family events, a few business functions, nothing inappropriate, everything strictly professional. $1 million, I repeated slowly. $1 million. I should have walked out right then, should have told him where to stick his crazy proposal. But then I thought about my mom's medical bills, about my landlord threatening eviction, about Kevin's words echoing in my head about not being ambitious enough. You're insane, I said finally. Probably. He slid the contract across the desk. But I'm also serious. Think about it, Maya. What could you do with that money? Everything, I thought. Fix everything that's wrong with my life. Start my business. Help my family. Never worry about groceries again. I need time to think about it. Of course, take the contract with you. Read it over. But Maya, he stood as I gathered my purse, contract in hand. Whatever you decide, I meant what I said in the coffee shop. You're the first person in years who's looked at me and not immediately wanted something. As I walked out of that office, my head spinning, I couldn't help thinking, he was wrong about that last part. I did want something. I just wasn't sure it was something he could buy. I said yes. After 3 sleepless nights and countless calls to my best friend who thought I'd lost my mind, I signed that contract. The next morning, a black car picked me up from my apartment, and suddenly, I was living in a world that felt like a movie. Adrian wasn't kidding about the transformation. A team of stylists descended on me like fairy godmothers, with unlimited budgets. Designer dresses, jewelry that cost more than most people's cars, shoes that actually fit my weird, narrow feet. They even gave me etiquette lessons, which fork to use when, how to hold a champagne glass without looking like I was chugging beer. Remember, Adrian said as we prepared for our first public appearance together. We've been secretly dating for 2 months. We met at a charity event. Keep it simple, believable. Our first test was a gallery opening in Manhattan. Art I didn't understand. Conversations about tax shelters I definitely didn't understand. And people who looked at me like they were trying to figure out what I was doing there. Which, honestly, I was wondering myself. Darling, Adrian said, his arm around my waist, this is Maya. Maya, meet Jonathan Harrington from The Times. I smiled and shook hands, trying to channel every episode of those housewives shows I secretly watched. But then Jonathan asked where I went to school, and when I mentioned state, the temperature in the conversation dropped about 10 degrees. State, how accessible, Jonathan said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. And your family? Are they in business? My mom works at a community center. My dad drives trucks, I said, watching his nose practically wrinkle in distaste. Regular people doing regular jobs. The silence that followed was deafening. Jonathan excused himself, suddenly needing to catch an old friend. As he walked away, I heard him mutter to someone. I thought Cross had better taste. I felt my cheeks burn, but Adrian just tightened his grip on my waist. Ignore him. He's an ass who inherited his job from Daddy. But it wasn't just Jonathan. All night I caught the whispers, the looks, the barely concealed questions about what someone like Adrian was doing with someone like me. By the time we got in the car at the end of the night, I felt wrung out. I don't think this is going to work, I said, staring out the window. I don't belong in your world. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that surprised me. Good. I was starting to hate my world anyway. I looked at him then, really looked, and saw something in his eyes I hadn't expected, loneliness. Here was a man who had everything money could buy, surrounded by people who wanted to be near him, and he was utterly, completely alone. Maybe we both needed this arrangement more than either of us wanted to admit. 2 weeks into our arrangement, I met the one person who saw right through us. Elena Cross, Adrian's grandmother, 80 years old, sharp as a tack, and absolutely terrifying in the most elegant way possible. So, she said, studying me over her teacup during our first lunch together, how much is my grandson paying you? I nearly choked on my water. Adrian, sitting beside me, went completely rigid. Grandmother. Oh, please, Adrian. I've been watching people perform for me for 8 decades. This girl here, she gestured at me with her perfectly manicured hand. She's either the finest actress I've ever seen, or you two are about as convincing as a $3 bill. I looked at Adrian, panic rising in my chest. This was it. Game over before we'd even really started. But Elena surprised me. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. Relax, dear. I won't tell. Then she sat back, a mischievous twinkle in her eyes. But I want to know why. The story came pouring out. Not Adrian's version about family pressure, but the real one. About my mom needing surgery. About bills piling up. About feeling invisible in my own life. Elena listened without judgment, nodding occasionally. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned to Adrian. You know, your grandfather proposed to me with a $2 ring from a pawn shop. Not because he was cheap, but because it was all he could afford. I said yes because I knew he was offering me something worth more than money. What was that? I asked. His heart, dear, completely and without reservation. She looked between us with knowing eyes. Real love isn't a transaction, it's a leap of faith. Later that evening, Adrian insisted on driving me home instead of sending the usual car. We sat outside my building, neither of us moving to get out. She liked you, he said finally. She saw right through us. And she still liked you. He turned to look at me. Want to know something? She hasn't approved of anyone I've brought home in, well, ever. That's because they were all real relationships, I pointed out. Were they? He stared ahead, hands gripping the steering wheel. Maya, can I tell you something? I don't think I've ever had a real relationship in my life. Every woman I've dated has wanted something from me. Money, status, connections to advance their careers. I wanted to argue, but something in his voice stopped me. There was a vulnerability there I'd never heard before. My parents, he continued, their marriage was a business merger. Literally. 2 tech companies joining forces through wedding vows. They barely spoke to each other unless it was about stocks or board meetings. I learned early that love was just another deal to be negotiated. We sat in silence, the weight of his confession settling between us. In that moment, I realized something that terrified me. This wasn't just business anymore. Somewhere between the fancy galas and the quiet conversations, I was starting to care about this lonely billionaire who thought love was a commodity. Adrian, I said softly, what if your grandmother is right? What if love isn't something you can buy or negotiate? He looked at me then, really looked, and for a second, I saw past all the walls he'd built up. Then I've been doing it wrong my whole life. Then everything started falling apart. It was week 6 of our arrangement, and someone leaked photos of us to the press. Not just any photos, intimate moments we thought were private. Us laughing over dinner, him helping me with my coat, that moment when I wiped sauce off his chin and he caught my hand, holding it just a second too long. The headlines were brutal. Cross's new charity case. Billionaire's latest fling from the wrong side of town. Is Adrian Cross slumming it? But the worst part wasn't the media. It was the comments online. Hundreds of people who didn't know me tearing apart everything about me. My appearance, my background, my worthiness to breathe the same air as Adrian Cross. Gold digger. Social climber. He must be paying her. That last one stung because, well, it was true. Adrian tried to shield me from it all, but how do you hide from the internet? My co-workers saw the photos. My neighbors saw the headlines. My mom called, worried sick about what I'd gotten myself into. "Baby girl," she said during one of our late-night phone calls, "I know you took this job to help with my medical bills, but is it worth this? All this nastiness?" I didn't know how to answer, because somewhere along the way, it had stopped being just about the money. Then came the night that changed everything. We were at yet another charity gala. Something for underprivileged kids getting scholarships. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was in the bathroom, touching up my lipstick, when I heard familiar voices from the next stall. I don't understand what he sees in her. It's obviously a publicity stunt. Adrian's trying to look more relatable for that new government contract. Please. He's probably just having fun with her before he finds a real wife. I stood there, frozen, as they continued tearing me apart. When they left, I stayed in that stall for a full 5 minutes, trying not to cry and ruin my makeup. I walked back to the ballroom, head held high, and found Adrian talking to some investors. He looked up when he saw me, that soft smile spreading across his face, the one that had become so familiar, so real. "There you are," he said, reaching for my hand. "I was telling them about your idea for micro-investing apps." He'd been listening when I mentioned it weeks ago, actually listening, not just pretending. But instead of feeling happy, all I felt was confusion. Was this part of the act? How could I tell any more what was real and what was performance? Later that night, as we stood outside my building again, I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Adrian, what are we doing?" "What do you mean?" "This, all of it. The contract says 3 months, but it feels like we're playing house and I don't know what's real anymore." He was quiet for so long, I thought he wasn't going to answer. Then he said, "I don't know either." And that terrified me more than any headline ever could. The breaking point came at Elena's 80th birthday party. Adrian had hired the best caterers, decorated his grandmother's estate like something out of a fairy tale, and invited everyone who mattered in their world. I wore a dress that cost more than my car and smiled until my face hurt. Everything was going perfectly until she showed up. Victoria Sterling, supermodel, heiress, and Adrian's ex-girlfriend. She glided into the party like she owned the place, which, knowing her family's wealth, she probably did. Within minutes, she'd cornered me by the champagne fountain. "Well, well," she said, looking me up and down like I was a bug she'd found in her salad. "Adrian's little pet project. Excuse me? Oh, come on, you don't really think this is real, do you?" She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Adrian told me all about his little arrangement. How much is he paying you? 1 million? 2? My blood ran cold. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Please. I was at his office when he drew up that contract. Find someone genuine," he said. "Someone my grandmother will love." "You're not his girlfriend, sweetheart. You're an employee." I felt like the floor was crumbling beneath me. Around us, the party continued. People laughing and clinking glasses, oblivious to my world imploding. Adrian finds it amusing, Victoria continued, how easily you've slipped into this role. He said you actually seem to believe you matter to him. It's quite entertaining, really. I don't remember moving, but suddenly I was pushing through the crowd, desperate for air. Adrian caught my arm as I headed for the door. Maya, what's wrong? I turned to face him, and everything came pouring out. Is this entertaining for you, watching me pretend to care about someone who thinks of me as hired help? What? Maya, what are you talking about? Victoria told me everything. About how you discussed me like I was some kind of business transaction. About how you think it's funny that I actually started to... I couldn't finish the sentence. Adrian's face went white. Maya, it's not like that. Yes, this started as an arrangement, but it became something more. You have to know that. Do I? How am I supposed to know what's real with you anymore? You've been pretending for so long, maybe you don't even know yourself. Tears were streaming down my face now, and I didn't care who saw. I quit, Adrian. Keep your money. I'm done being your entertainment. I walked out of that party and didn't look back. But as I waited for the taxi in the circular driveway, I heard Elena's voice behind me. Child, wait. I turned to find Adrian's grandmother standing there, looking every bit the formidable woman she was. Victoria is a bitter girl who's been trying to get my grandson back for years. Don't let her poison what you two have found. Mrs. Cross, with all due respect, what we had was fake, a business arrangement. She shook her head slowly. I've watched Adrian his whole life. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Money can buy a lot of things, dear, but it can't buy the way his whole face changes when you walk into a room. The taxi arrived then, and I got in without another word. As we drove away, I saw Adrian burst through the front doors, looking frantically around the driveway. For a moment, our eyes met through the car window. The expression on his face broke my heart all over again, because for the first time, I saw what Elena had seen, and I realized that maybe, just maybe, I'd thrown away the best thing that had ever happened to me. 2 months later, I was actually doing okay. I'd used my savings to lease a tiny office space and started my own marketing consultancy. My first client, a small bakery run by an immigrant family who reminded me why I loved this work in the first place. Real people, real dreams, real challenges. I'd thrown myself into building something that was mine, something no one could take away. The headlines had died down. The internet had moved on to torturing someone else, and I was starting to feel like myself again. Then Adrian showed up at my office. I looked up from my laptop to find him standing in my doorway, looking uncertain in a way I'd never seen before. Gone was the confident billionaire. This was just a man who looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. Hi, he said softly. Hi. I closed my laptop slowly. How did you find me? I have my ways. He stepped into the small space, looking around at my mismatched furniture and inspirational posters. This is nice. Very you. We stood there in awkward silence until he spoke again. Maya, I need you to know that Victoria lied. Yes, this started as a contract, but it stopped being just business within the first week. Maybe even that first day in the coffee shop. I wanted to interrupt, to protect my heart that was already starting to race, but he held up his hand. I've spent my whole life thinking I could control everything, buy anything I needed, but you can't purchase what we had, what we have. He took a step closer. That night you walked away, I realized something. I wasn't losing an employee or someone playing a role. I was losing the first person who ever made me want to be better than I am. Adrian, I'm not done. His voice was shaking slightly. I know I handled everything wrong. I should have been honest about my feelings from the start. I should have protected you better from people like Victoria. I should have fought for you instead of letting you walk away. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. This is the contract we signed. I had my lawyers void it 6 weeks ago. I stared at the document, seeing it had been officially terminated and stamped. Why? Because I didn't want you there for the money anymore. I wanted you there for the same reason I'd started looking forward to every fake date, every staged event, every moment we shared. Because I was falling in love with you, and I was terrified you'd never feel the same about someone like me. My heart stopped. Someone like you? Someone who grew up thinking love was just another transaction. Someone who's never had a real relationship in his life. Someone who didn't know how to just be human until I met you. I looked at this man who had everything money could buy, standing in my cramped office, looking more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him. The thing is, Adrian, I said quietly, I figured out the same thing, that what we had was real. Not the public appearances or the fancy dinners, but those quiet moments, when you'd remember little things I said, when you'd actually listen to my ideas, when you looked at me like I was the most important person in the room. You were, he said immediately. You are. So where does that leave us? No contract, no arrangement, no grandmother's birthday to fake our way through. He smiled then, that genuine smile I'd missed so much. How about we start over? No contracts, no conditions, no rules. Just Adrian and Maya, figuring out what this could be. And if it doesn't work out, then at least we'll know it was real. I looked at this man who'd taught me to believe I deserved more than scraping by, who'd shown me a world I never imagined, who'd made me fall in love despite every reason I had to protect my heart. Okay, I said, but I have one condition. His face fell slightly. What's that? Next time you take me to dinner, we're going to that little diner on 5th Street. No champagne, no 5-course meals, just burgers and conversation. His laugh filled my tiny office, and for the first time in months, everything felt right again. 6 months later, we had that burger date, then another and another. We learned how to be together without contracts or complications, just two people who'd found something real in the most unlikely way. And you know what? Love really was priceless, but it was also absolutely worth the wait.